Today, exactly. You can sort of stare off in your own direction. It's a wonderful thing. Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church. We are, Kelly in particular, has just started to get us streaming. So we are now live streaming today, but that's really we're gonna think of that beginning next week. We're also recording. So if for people at home or if you don't come to church, you can watch live now. We figured out the technology, and by we, I mean Kelly. So, as things work. Yeah. Just a few announcements. Michael, welcome back, Michael, who's our favorite bass player. I won't tell him that he's our only bass player, but that's another thing. Robin and Margot, raise your hands, would you? Robin and Margot are kind of our loose coordinators for the Women's March next week, which is downtown. There is not a local version of that. The march begins at 10 in Pershing Square, and I think who here is interested in possibly marching in that next week? Okay, well, if you are, those two are going to gather outside, and you can go talk to them, figure out carpooling and, whatever kind of adventures that involves. I want to thank Ruth Stewart, who I think I saw here. Ruth, for bringing the birds from a week or two ago. That was great. And so lots of things going on. Today is we have a movie coming up. I think we're gonna try to make this a monthly movie night. We had a movie night a couple of years ago before COVID. This one is brought to us by Barbara Marriott. It's called 9/11's Unsettled Dust. And it's an environmental theme. It's sort of the fight for health care for people who worked down at 9/11, the sort of untold environmental impact of 9/11. So we're going to be in here. There are little flyers that I made on the tables out there. Maybe, I know Suzanne was passing around some. Try to come and we'll kick this sort of this movie off. We're going to sit spaced in here and watch a movie. Keep the doors open to the degree that we can.
When is it?
It's next Friday. That's this coming Friday. Angela's here with O, and they're going to turn the microphone on and give us a little update. Yeah, this is takes a while.
Good morning, everyone. Thank
Yeah.
you, Steve. So we have our We See You dinner. It's a conversation framed by sincerity, kindness, and generosity,
Closer,
looking at
but
race.
Yeah, there we go.
And so please ask me if you're interested. And if you want to go online, it's www.gocompassion.org, and you'll be on the landing page that'll have the details. Thank you.
So the first dinner is?
The first dinner is October 3rd, this next Sunday, a week
right
from
coming
today.
up.
6 to 8. 4 Sunday suppers, 6 to 8.
4 suppers. The scholarships, it's fairly expensive. It's it's $200, right?
It is.
Yeah. 4 dinners, and we're going to have, it's not just church people, it's a whole group of people. We're only actually bringing in 20 church people, if that. And we're going to mix it up, multi-race. We're going to have real conversations and,
Small pods facilitated by the
with dinner.
Asian Racial Healing Circle folks are going to be facilitating.
Yeah. So facilitated conversations, and we're grateful to have Angela and O with us as much as we have them and bringing us programming and all that great stuff. Next week is the blessing of the animals, pet people. I'm preaching on dinosaurs, so bring the kids too. They'll love that. I want to announce that we are mindful that we stand on Tongva land. Tongva people were here and long before we were, and we want to be respectful of that great truth. Okay, I'm going to bring Vivian up to light our chalice and officially let off our sacredness of our church.
Good morning. Oop.
Just like at the Vatican.
Our chalice lighting words today are from Dr. Sophia Betancourt, Dr. Reverend Sophia Betancourt. The good news is that we are in control of what we do in our daily living. If we, each of us, represents a missing remnant in the fabric of our collective future, then together we lean into a possibility that has yet to be experienced in human history. A collective wholeness, an unassailable good. That is the kind of salvation I'm here to fight for in the small moments of every single day.
What a great and practical vision that is. We begin with the premise, the multicultural transformation team, that the values of Unitarian Universalism cannot be fully realized in a system that's centered in one cultural expression. Would you just pause and think about that? We have really worked in the center of white culture and the values, and that's really stymied some of the expressions in our movement, and really, as we see with the colors around us, to some degree, our own church. Our two pillar principles, the inherent worth and dignity of each person, and the interdependent web of all existence, our first and last of the principles, suggest that there's really can't be a bias to one cultural group or another. So today we're called to name and change those biases that we might have a more authentic expression of our own particular faith. Today, replacing the sermon and reading in that sort of central part of the service, we're going to have a hard look at who we want to become. There's 7 people, and they're sort of seated in the center there, not exactly as I envisioned, but close enough. They're a newly formed standing committee. The group has been meeting weekly for about 18 months now. They are the initiators of the MOAD position, and that all began around George Floyd's murder last summer. The organic way the MTT came about is a testament to the realization by sort of each one of them and us that race, and I'm speaking specifically about sort of collective systematic racism, not individual acts, not somebody with a hood on their head, permeates nearly every aspect of our society. Each of us came to this from a different point, and we've all had our own journeys on those calls and in those meetings. So, as some white people of lifelong privilege, others as members of other disenfranchised, oppressed groups like the LGBT community, and of course people of color. So today we're interested in talking and learning about what we believe to be healthy race-based discussions, and they're critical to the future. And we have, there's blue sheets. I would encourage you, if you have a question, to write on them. There's some been passed around, and we created 7 to 10 questions that we thought were the most, the frequently asked questions. So we're going to go back and forth between questions we decided people might be interested in hearing and any questions that people write in. So I'd like to see that bowl more filled with blue sheets of paper, and Melissa can pass them around for anyone who has questions. This is the central part of our service, but this is the time to think about questions for yourself. I'm going to pick one alternatively, one blue and one white, and then we're going to turn the remaining third of our sort of open time over to microphones for anyone who just has a question that bubbles up in spirit. So that's going to be the central part of our service today. We, of course, turn to our musical wing over here and initiate all that with opening hymn.
I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna study war no more. No study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. And study war no more.
Hi, I'm going to do the children's moment, and we've arranged things a little bit differently today. So I'm just going to.
Why don't we invite the kids up?
Yeah, okay. To the rug or.
We're gonna
Okay,
put 'em
never.
here.
Sure, on the rug.
Okay. Spread out a little bit.
Okay. Thanks for coming down. Okay, so in Sunday school today, we're going to be talking about the same issues that the adults are talking about. We're going to be talking about race and culture and about history and how that affects people's lives. So we have an activity and a book here that I got. And then there's another book, and this book is by Julius Lester, who played a key role in civil rights era and then became the first black professor at UMass in Amherst. And he wrote this book just before a few years before he passed, and he passed in 2018. And the book is called Let's Talk About Race. It won a Newbery Honor Book Author Award. Okay, sure. I'll turn the pages.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so let's talk about race. No, let's do this. And the pictures in this are just beautiful. It says, I am a story, so are you, so is everyone. My story begins the same way yours does. I was born on this date. Take me, for example. I was born on January 27th, 1939, in St. Louis, Missouri. It says, I'm kind of old, huh? But I know that that's not that old. How does your story begin? Many people and many events are part of my story, and yours too. The names of our parents and where they were born, whether or not we have brothers and or sisters. I had a brother who was 9 years older than me, but he passed away. What kind of work our parents do or did? My father was a minister. My mother was a housewife. My story and yours have many elements, such as favorite food. Mine is fish. Hobbies. I like to do crossword puzzles, take photographs, and cook. Favorite color, red or maybe green. But I like orange and purple too. I think my favorite color is all of them. Religion, I'm Jewish. Nationality, I'm from the United States. Favorite time of day, night. Oh, there's something that is part of my story. It's part of yours too. That's what race we are. I'm black. What race are you? Just as I am a story and you are a story, and countries tell stories about themselves, race is a story too. Whether you're black like me, or Asian, Hispanic, or white, each race has a story about itself, and that story is almost always the same. My race is better than your race. Some stories are true, some are not. Those who say my race is better than your race are telling a story that is not true. Why should some people say their race is better than another? Because they feel bad about themselves? Because they're afraid? Because. But there are other ways all of us, even me, even you, think we are better than others. I'm better than you because I live in this or that city. I'm better than you because I go to this or that school. I'm better than you because I'm a boy. I'm better than you because I'm a girl. I'm better than you because my dad or mom makes more money than your dad or mom. I'm better than you because I'm white. I'm better than you because I'm black. I'm better than you because I'm Hispanic. I'm better than you because I'm Asian. None of these stories are true, are they? I want to tell you a true story, but I need your help. Here's what I want you to do. Take your fingers and press them softly against your skin, right below your eyes. Be careful, and don't poke yourself in the eye. Okay, now, press gently until you feel the hard bone right beneath the surface. Okay, it also says you can do that to another person, but you can see everybody's doing that, right? Now, press someplace else on your body. Maybe your arm or your chest or your head. Press anywhere until you feel the hard bones beneath your skin. Beneath everyone's skin are the same hard bones. If you were to go outside without your skin on and without your hair on your head, turn the page and see what you would look like. But you want to know something? If I went outside without my skin, my mustache, and the hair on my head, what little I have left, wait, that's not me, I would look just like you, and you would look just like me. Just suppose, one day everyone in the whole world decided to take off all our clothes and all our skin and all our hair. Then we would do what we normally do every day, go to school, go to work, and play and shop. Everything would be normal, except we would look at each other and couldn't tell who was a man, who was a woman, who was white, black, Hispanic, or Asian. Which story shall we believe? The one that says my race is better than yours, or the one we just discovered for ourselves, beneath our skin? I look like you, and you look like me, and she looks like her and him, and he looks like him or her. And we look like them, and they look like us. When I look at you, which story do I see? Do I see only the color of your skin, the shape of your eyes, the texture of your hair? Do I look at you and think I know your story when I don't even know your name? Or do I look at you and wonder, what's your name? When were you born? Where were you born? Where do you live? What do you like? What don't you like? Gee, maybe we like and dislike some of the same things. Your race is not all that you are. My race is not all that I am. Yes, I am black, but I am also a man. I am of medium height. I have a deep voice and a loud laugh. I love to laugh. Do you? I live in a big house in the woods, in a small town. I like pancakes and macaroni and cheese, and. I am so many things because my race, besides my race. To know my story, you have to put together everything I am. Like I bet you didn't know I have asthma. Beneath our skin, we all look alike, you and me. I'll take off my skin. Will you take off yours?
message from the Nudist Foundation. We're going to sing out our kids with our Singing Out Our Kids song, which is going to be up on the board. Go with wisdom, go with wonder.
Go with wisdom, go with wonder, go to meet a brand new day. Learn to see the light within you as we go along your way.
Here, I got it. It's now time for joys and concerns. Leanne is going to light candles for us, as she does, among the multiple things that she does for us. And just going to the vast number of people in this world in harm's way, in some challenging domestic violence situation, in some war-torn country, in poverty, challenged by a lack of food, or really the multitude of people are challenged by something they did not self-select or cause. Let's stop and just extend ourselves to them right now. And I will light the final candle while Leanne prepares to prayer.
Today's prayer is called Affirmation of Hope by Loretta Williams. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is a struggle yet ahead. We know that the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns, and we stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all people. We affirm the brotherhood, sisterhood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the glow of the divine spirit, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathering community, we will discover the strength not to hide in indifference or defensiveness. Affirming that hope publicly expressed energizes and enables us to move forward. Together, we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays. Amen.
So, has anybody filled out this blue scraps of paper? These are encouraged. We thought we would do a mix of frequently asked questions or questions the transformation team most expected were on people's minds, and we created 8 or 9, 10 questions that we thought, so I'm going to start with one, but if anyone has a sheet of paper, they have a question, I'm going to pull it, so you're going to get your question answered. And then we'll do that till about 15 past, and then we're going to open it up for open questions, and we'll just pass the microphones around. So the transformation team, like I said in the introduction, has been going for about 18 months. We're now in the position to hire a half-time DRE and essentially a half-time person, a multicultural outreach coordinator. It's a full-time position united in those two tasks. Thanks. And we thought we'd just, there hasn't really been a public vetting of those questions and a chance to sort of, for the transformation team to speak about their own journeys and for people to ask questions about the path of the church and all of those matters. So, here's your chance. I'm going to start with just what we thought of was a question. Well, it's my answer. I'm going to pass on that one. Well, all right, I'll answer it. The first question we thought was important was, why do we need a multicultural outreach and religious education director? Why do we need this person, right? What will this person do? How will they interact with the church? And how will we know if they are successful? So I had the hardest question. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions wrapped in there. So I think the answer to that question is need is a funny word, right? I think we would define ourselves as needing, in the history of our church's pattern, a DRE, or a religious education leader for the kids. Tim's been amazing, and we had Claire this summer, but we really do need somebody in that position to grow the family part of the church. But when you think about the history of this church and its location here now, and the fact that 35% of people who live up on the hill, and the fact that most of our cultural expressions have been kind of centered in white culture, I think the idea that in a movement, in a denomination that has put anti-racism front and center, following on the legacy of placing LGBTQ concerns as a successful part of our history, I think need might be better replaced with opportunity. So that is the initial we have an opportunity because of a grant to add this person. I think it's a fabulous opportunity. I think we'd be silly to pass it up. So I would replace the question of need with opportunity, even if we might define traditional need as being with the DRE. How will this person be successful? That is a question that is a little bit clumsier to answer. I think we will know it in our heart. I think that will involve us being both challenged and supported. We really want to focus on this not being a question of how many, people of color faces we begin to see in the congregation, but whether we feel like that's a value added to the church and whether we are truly becoming a more multicultural place would be, I think, the criteria for success, as vague as that might be. Let's see. How will they interact with the church? They will be a staff person in our small staff repertoire of people governed by the transformation team and to some degree by me. Yeah. May I say something? Sure. Yeah, there you go.
While we are the multicultural transformation team, we're still all individuals.
Of course.
So I have a little different take on the question of why do we need this multicultural outreach and religious education person? As you know, PUC does not reflect the complexion of our community. We never have. As Steve mentioned, there are 35% Latinx and Asian Americans on the Hill. It's 40% in Torrance of just Asian Americans. Torrance, I recently found out, is the 7th most populous city in the United States, over 100,000 people with Asian American population. So as you can see, we clearly do not represent our community. We never have, and I don't know of a single UU church that does, frankly, even in Honolulu. So the question of need is, if our community is growing more multicultural, but we are not, what does that mean for the future of Pacific Unitarian Church and the future of Unitarian Universalism.
Thank you.
So my answer is, we need this.
Okay. I'm going to read a question that was put in here just to honor the process we established. Is that all right? And then we'll open that up a little bit more later. So if you want to write your question down, that gets you to the front of the line. News. Okay. This question is read, if you don't study War No More, which was our song, how do you hope to understand the underlying dynamics that the course of all wars inevitably follows? Should we not study von Clausewitz and Sun Tzu? Does not the fact that the U.S. won every battle and still lost the war in Vietnam tell us that there is more there than meets the eye? A great question, not necessarily pertaining to the topic today. I think we have to be mindful of casting the vision that there will be no more wars at the same time, we're as innocent as doves and as wise as we are as serpents. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, so good question, different day. We'll go, Tracy. Yeah, we'll go here.
Didn't take so long to move up from the last of the line, huh? No, so I think I'm wondering about the religious education portion and am thinking about the religious background and the kind of education that comes from Unitarian Universalism, and I believe that it encompasses completely all the goals and everything that's been said here, but I also think that there's a tremendous amount that is UU, and I'm wondering if other UU directors of religious education have UU background and UU training in bringing forth the UU values and all that good stuff. You get what I'm trying to say.
This should be good. Thought you were going to answer that? Oh, no, I was going to, I don't know what to say to that question. Kimberly, yeah.
So when I did the GA, that was a big question that came up, and it's something that churches all over the country are usually debating, and most of the time they do have a UU background. And if they don't, they certainly will get trained in that, and there is training for RE directors, and there are exit interviews for when they leave to figure out, how to better the church. And so there's a lot that goes into that, and I think anyone that gets hired will end up having training, because we're really learning that's how you can really grow and have a really good and thriving program, right? So if you just kind of let anybody do what they're good at, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but to keep to that, this is a big debate. Why don't we just hire teachers that are teachers, know how to teach, right? But, sometimes you can be knowledgeable on a subject and not know how to teach it or develop programs, or, you really have to adapt that curriculum constantly, which is a big issue for all these little kids. You have kids sometimes all different ages. So it is something that we all think about, and that will absolutely be done. We will give them training. That's why we have a budget for that, and we just haven't done that in the past. Yeah, it's really important.
I want to honor our process at least a little. I know we don't have a lot of written questions. This was the 8th question that we asked ourselves, thinking it was on people's minds, I am more concerned about catastrophic climate change and pollution in our own backyard. Are not environmental issues just as important as racism? And one of us picked up that question and answered it. Vivian, here we go.
Some of us who anticipated your questions also wrote them down so that the answers would not just be off the top of our heads, but would have some thought and research behind it. So I've written my answer down. So environmental issues should rightly be in the forefront of the causes that we address. But consider who is the most adversely and immediately harmed by pollution, by climate change. It's invariably Black, Indigenous, people of color. whether it's in our own backyards, the air pollution in San Pedro Harbor, or around the world, the climate change that is devastating forests and other habitats. To care only about the animals and trees, but not the people whose lives are affected and will be catastrophically affected, is not acceptable. We in the middle class white suburbs are barely inconvenienced, but it's foolhardy to think that others are not suffering greatly. By viewing the world through an anti-racist lens, we are automatically talking about environmental issues, and about crime, and about housing, and about education and workplace discrimination. It's all those issues that UUs care about. So I don't view anti-racism as just another issue, like issue of the month. It's our social justice issue of the century, of the millennium. It is the lens through which we must view the world if we're going to make systemic change in a society that was founded and built on the backs of Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. Anti-racism is at the root of every single social problem we have, including environmentalism. And we have to address it directly so that we can dig out the roots once and for all. So until our society as a whole can grow and flourish, we have to pay attention and view the world, including environmental issues, through an anti-racist lens.
Thanks, Bev. Good. You? Lisa, you had a question, then we'll turn here.
One of the things that I worry about is that we want to have people of color and diversity, but what are we going to do to meet those people's needs as well as our needs?
Let's see, yeah, let's, Tara, you take that one.
I actually think that's sort of related to the other question about RE. And I think that one of the things that we have discovered and feel is important is that sticking to just the UU way sticks to the UU way, and it doesn't open our minds. And so it's not a matter of setting aside the UU way. We definitely want to integrate it, but we want it and more. We want to integrate more perspective, more worldviews, more art, color, etc., into our world. And when we do that, what we find is UUs are very intellectual, and they're very proper, and they want things just right, and they want their newsletter very edited and perfectly correct.
What are you trying to say?
And we tend to, frankly, disrespect people who don't do it exactly right. In our eyes, what is exactly right? And so we would like to help. Well, and I'll tell you that my journey has been to relax from the right way and look at other ways and what's positive about those other ways. What's the wisdom in the other ways? I might not totally agree with another way, but there's always some wisdom there. And there's always something to be brought to the table. And I don't want to throw away that nugget that's gold because it's wrapped in a wrapper that I don't understand and I haven't seen before.
Thanks, Steve. If it was someone other than Kim, I would have said yes. Question number 7 we prompted ourselves to ask is, I don't like the language you use, such as white supremacy or blaming innocent people for the mistakes of the past. Why can't we just not see color and all get along as human beings?
Yeah, we got here so I can take off my mask.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so we all know language matters, right? Words matter. And words can help heal, they can wound people, and they can even define our reality. So I wanted to tackle this question actually because this was a tough one for me at the beginning. And I did not want to feel like I was being considered a white supremacist. I mean, like, I'm a good, liberal, progressive. Come on now, you know? That did not describe me at all. I did not feel, and I don't think it describes anyone in this room. I do not. But I learned that there's a difference between the terms white supremacist and the term white supremacy culture. So I think, I don't know about you, but I've learned so much just in the past few years about our country and our history. And I've learned to see so clearly that so much of our history has been defined by this white-centeredness, this white dominance. We can look at the Constitution, we can look at redlining, we can look at all kinds of voter suppression, we can look at housing and lending practices, and it is very hard to not see systemic racism as the foundation of this country. Okay, so now we can agree, so there's a white supremacy culture. And I think if you are a white supremacist, the way I see that, because I'm kind of an old school girl too, I think of somebody in a white cape or somebody at a rally who's actively trying to maintain this systemic racism. And again, I don't see myself this way, and I don't see anyone here that way. However, I do feel like I am the beneficiary of that white supremacy culture, and we are all affected by it. Even if we don't want to think about it, we are all affected by it. And when you have air to breathe, you don't notice the air. When we have privilege, we don't notice privilege. But when you don't have it, you notice. And I don't know about you, but I never had a security guard follow me through Macy's. I was never afraid to be stopped by the police. I argued over that ticket. I wasn't scared. That's my privilege. I got a home loan. That's my privilege. And so I am part of this white supremacy culture. And I didn't ask for it, but there it is, right? So getting back to this language, and I'm not looking at my notes, I'm just speaking from my heart because I feel passionately, and I've learned so much, and it's hard to learn this. I have cried so many times. You can ask people in this room how many times I've cried over this.
7.
And I think it's 8. You weren't with me that one time. But there it is. And the term white supremacy culture, it sounds ugly and it's accurate. It's one of those things that's a both and. It is ugly. We hate to say it. We hate to think we are part of it, but it's accurate. And some people have said that when you use words to describe things, you give them power. And I think that's true in a way, but I also think to take away power, you have to see it and you have to say it. You have to use those words. So in order to dismantle this thing that we don't want to be here, we have to be brave and we have to use those hard words. And one thing I think about everyone in here is I think you are brave. I think you're braver than you think you are. It's one of those Winnie the Pooh things, you know? You're braver than you think, you're smarter than you seem, and we can do it. It hurts, it's hard. I don't like saying white supremacy culture, but here it is. I'm a beneficiary. I have a pretty good life. And yeah, my people were Irish and everything poor, and my dad had a house with an outhouse. It's not about class. I mean, there's that, but more than that, it is white supremacy culture. And I've said it about 10 times. and you can start saying it too. And some of you probably already do, and that's the only way we can tear it down. And I know that we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prez. I'll do one, and then I'll take a question from the group. This is number 6 in our prepped questions. Why are we not joining an anti-racist group like Black Lives Matter or partnering with Toberman House or some other community organization instead of just focusing on ourselves?
That was my question. I could stand.
Yeah.
No.
You don't have to, just
Fishbowl
talk.
to make it, all right, so whatever. So this was also an eye-opener for me, right? Because I feel like we're just people that want to do good, and I really care about social justice and class issues, and I saw so many injustices as a teacher, and that's where I realized my privilege as well, when I saw what all my students went through on a daily basis. So we have volunteered with Toberman. We have given them money. We have given them food. We have given them backpacks. A lot of us have donated and collected this. But all of that is just charity. It's charity. It's just giving them stuff. And they need it, and it's a good thing for us to do that. But if you're really going to be welcoming, and I think that's what you were getting at and what we were getting at, if you have families that come up here that are different backgrounds and race and culture and ethnicities, and you may unwittingly not really be speaking their language, right? Not literally. And they may feel like we're really nice, and this is really a nice, awesome group, but they may not feel comfortable to keep coming here and really become part of the community. So there are many, many people in Toberman, and there are many kids that I've worked with that are fatherless, because a lot of people of color are put in prison, and then they end up being in poverty and not having fathers, and then we kind of label them as, these people of color that just don't have, intact families. So if those type of people are coming up here, they may feel uncomfortable that we're like married and white and our parents aren't in prison. I have this because I have ADD and I'll go off, so. How many white kids and rich kids get off with a slap when they do drugs or whatever, or their parents, and then instead we incarcerate most of the people that are people of color. All right. So in real partnerships, two parties have a reciprocity and a sharing of skills and cultures and needs. A relationship that allows us to sincerely ask others what they need and not just throw money at them. And although that is generous and often needed and accepted, it's far more beneficial to develop real relationships with other nonprofits and people in the community so that we are not just othering whole groups of people. What prevents people from staying is they feel othered in a very subtle and a nuanced way. One of the biggest reasons for the dwindling populations and congregations is the result of the unintentional othering of whole groups of people. So at PUC, I think we must look inwardly to see how we are unconsciously and unintentionally othering people so that we can be inclusive and not just aspire to diversity.
Thanks, Kim. I want to take a question from our crowd. Just any questions that relates to our path headed forward around anti-racism or the hiring of our MOAD? Diane?
So I'll stand over here and try not to contaminate anybody. I'm fine. I'm all vaccinated.
Yeah.
I find myself deeply agreeing with what you had to say, Vivian, which is not always the case, and I really appreciate the thoroughness that you put into this, all of you. I had this debate with my brother, who lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and is an arch-liberal, probably by contrast to the people around him, even more liberal than I.
Closer to the mic.
And I think that one of the things that we haven't exactly addressed, and just wanted to bring your awareness to it, because I think it's something we could also do, take a deep breath, to make an effort to understand the people that my beloved Hillary Clinton called deplorables. They are not all deplorable. And in fact, who the heck are we to call them deplorable? My brother will use that term, and I tell him about my other relatives who have MAGA hats and who are good, wonderful people. And they think differently, and they feel disenfranchised. And there's something to that. It's not just white supremacy culture. And I'm probably the only person here from Kentucky who's going to stand up and say that, but maybe there's a few other people from the South or other places where they feel isolated or rural or disenfranchised. I'm not saying it's the same thing as racism. It is a little bit related to classism. People who feel that they've been left out. And can we bring some attention to that as well? Because I would love to help us. I live in San Pedro too, Vivian, and I know some of my neighbors probably have MAGA hats on the wall that I haven't seen, you know? Let's think about them as well somehow. Let's try to move to a better world in that way as well.
Thanks.
Our question number 3.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it felt more like a statement than a question, but yeah, sure.
I'm probably the person who brings that comment to this group the most, so I will respond to it. And I think that it's really important, and my journey involved being compassionate and curious. And it really relates to what I said the last time also, that while I don't agree with MAGA followers, I am actually surrounded by it. That they are part of my tribe also, and so I have to deal with these people, these others.
Yeah.
But no, and what I've learned about talking with them and trying to have this conversation with them is that they get defensive, and that comes from a feeling they're being attacked, they're either afraid, ashamed, whatever. And so I ask them to go back and feel that feeling and find out, you know, why are you defensive? Where is that coming from? And you'll probably find some answers that make it easier for us to have a conversation next time. And I also tell my group here that we need to be compassionate also. And that when we use things like white supremacists, people are going to react and then they stop listening. And so before moving on, like, let's sit in this feeling that we're feeling. And they're feeling something and I'm feeling something. And frankly, when I have these conversations, I feel their defensiveness. I feel their anger, actually, usually. And I have to be prepared for that and not get defensive back. And I have to hear what they're saying, witness what they're feeling, and we can both move on. And that's why I think it's really important to approach the conversation with compassion and curiosity from both sides.
Right.
Thank you. We have a question from Kelly here. And this will be our last question.
Thanks, Tara and Diane. I'm glad you brought that up. But isn't, if we're dealing with the MAGA hat people, our Republicans, aren't we also then dealing with white supremacy culture within that? And aren't we concentrating more on the oppression due to the color of your skin and not because we're white and we're privileged enough to have these disagreements and to think differently? I mean, I thought it was, I think my feeling is, aren't we stepping out of white supremacy culture to make a difference and not, I don't know.
I do time-wise. It's not for any other reason. What's that? What question is yours, Gary? I'll find you a question. How's that? PUC has historically been on the side of the oppressed and supported liberal causes. Why isn't that enough?
We indeed have historically done that, and I think it's been a focus of this church for the 15 or so years I've been here. But if you look around the room, you'll see we haven't really successfully grown multiculturally. We have stayed primarily white. And the efforts that have been done have been wonderful, and I'm glad to have participated in some and seen others, but they've basically been sort of ad hoc efforts done by individuals who have driven them, and we haven't grown this into the core of the feeling of this church. So I think the important thing we're trying to do with the transformation team is, number one, understand the issues, because trust me, we didn't when we started. I certainly didn't. And they're very subtle and very different. And we think we make this a welcoming place for people of color. We don't really. But I think the important thing is now to look at our mission and vision and put this as a core part of our mission and vision, and to drive what we're doing in this church that way. It's not going to significantly change this church. We're just going to get better at doing this. We're going to hopefully become more multicultural. We're going to hopefully become bigger, and that just makes this a healthier church. So it's critical that we take this on right now. I think it's an important piece.
Good answer, Gary.
Question number 5 is, isn't classism, sexism, and heterosexism just as important as race? Why are we focusing so much on that, being race? Ben answered that.
I'll try to be very brief here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I started off by answering, by defining all of these entities, and I'm almost absolutely sure that everybody would agree the definitions are something we would not want to practice, whether it's heterosexualism, sexism, classism. So, having given you the definitions, you can read them on this. But be aware that the terminology and definitions with respect to all of these isms are changing, and I would behoove you to try to be aware as best you can what we are talking about. For example, someone mentions binary sexuality. What does it mean? It means you're either male or female. But there is also a category that is non-binary, and that is called gender fluid. Don't assume that you know what it means. It may not mean you're just a male or female, but be sensitive to it, you know. The word classism, and I was probably getting a little carried away here. What is class? And anybody ever read James Fallows? I think he writes for the Atlantic or somebody. Years ago, he and another editor got into it because this other editor said he met this woman, and you ever read these things in the paper on Sunday, he says, about the Franklin mitt, and you can buy these for God knows what, little trinkets and stuff. And this lady was so proud that she had bought these things. And the criticism of her was that not only was she proud that she had bought them, but she felt they were valuable. And the person criticizing her says, I felt sorry for this woman to think that they were valuable. All of us are capable of that kind of what you could call classism. Okay, so it's, but to answer the question, of course all of these things are bad. And why do we put the emphasis on racism today? I think we are currently living in an era of racial reckoning, so to speak. And the human tendency is to go with the flow. What is stylish? Even though racism is bad, and we agree that it should also be included. The sexism, classism, heterosexualism should also be included in our discussions because, quite frankly, they are all tied together. And it's complex at times, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't respond to it. So the answer to the question says, of course, these things are important. And we're not saying they're unimportant simply because we're not talking about it in today. Okay?
Thank you, Ben. Yeah. I want to return to the exercise.
We interviewed a MOED person, and at the end of the interview, we asked her, hey, how did you feel being up here? And she's a person of color. And she was very honest, and she said, it was great being up here. Everybody was super nice, and it was really wonderful. But if I came up here with my kids, and I've gone to different Unitarian churches and tried them in lots of different places, we would go in the car and we would say, they were really super nice. Like, we can maybe come here again sometime if we want to. But they would have looked at each other and had the conversation, but we would have to become white in order. We'd have to be like them and become white, which we could do on occasion, every once in a while, and be nice with them, but that they wouldn't really, but they would accept us most if we were white, and as soon as we did something that was a little more unique and based on our own ethnic background, then we would either become exotic or unappealing.
Yeah.
And that was just a real example, and I have chills right now.
No, I think we all felt like that's really the heart of it, is we want to be more welcoming to people, and that involves being a little more culturally broad and, racially diverse. And I think that's the aim of what this entire committee is up to. I'll let Carolyn have the final word as anyone, and then we're going to all we're going late, so.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is not very well formulated. But I just had the thought, how did we all feel when we included more soul music? When we were doing more,
Gospel hymns
religious,
and stuff?
Yeah. Wasn't it fun?
Yeah.
I mean, I right away felt like that was fun, and I really enjoyed that. And in my eras through life, when I've been able to join or be part of a group that was more primarily black, and I'm talking about as a staff person at the Pentagon, where there's, lots of wonderfully. Anyway, I began to feel like I'm really missing out on something here in my sort of rigid world. So the problem is, as she says, is finding a welcoming culture for people who have, other cultures. And I know this is, kind of sounds kind of dumb, but anyway.
No, doesn't at all. Carolyn, I think we basically share that sentiment. I think we want to be, I don't think there's any resistance to us being more broad and more open. And I would encourage us to think about giving generously to the work. I don't want to, okay. Be good.
I always am good.
No, you're not.
I think we need to all look around the sanctuary. That's my comment.
Okay. I'd like people to reach up and feel their brows, like their eye, the bones, like they did before. Under your eye, but anywhere around your bones, any part of your skeleton. And now I want you to reach into your pocketbook and think about being generous for the life and work of Pacific Unitarian Church. Sev, Michael?
Woo. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, or their lack of, as it may be, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together. In spite of time and death and the space between the stars, we pause in silent witness to that unity. May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste and blessed be. And now our service truly begins. Thank you for participating today. That closes our service. We do have a number of new member badges for people who have just joined the church in the last year or two. You might, if that qualifies as you, come on up and grab a badge. Judy can manage some of that. And thank you for coming today, and hopefully it was enlightening.